What's up, family? Welcome back. Today we are reading a new book, and that book is Genesis. Now, I was previously reading Romans, but I felt God tell me not to continue to read Romans to you all because I have read it previously, just not the way that I've read previous books to you all, chapter by chapter, line by line. And so, because I've already read it to you all, I felt He was telling me not to read it to you again. So that is why now we are in the portion of Genesis. And right now I'm going to read the bigger picture. And since this book does not have a takeaway, I'll be reading the principles to live by, starting with the bigger picture. The God who created human beings and punished disobedience with death began his great plan of redemption with his covenant with Abraham and his descendants. Now for the principles to live by. Since God reached out to us before we reached out to him, we should always thank him for saving us by his sovereign grace. The title of today's text is The Creation, starting in verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Verse 1. The opening verse of the Bible, 7 words in Hebrew, establishes 7 key truths upon which the rest of the Bible is based. First, God exists. The essential first step in pleasing God is acknowledging his existence in Hebrews 11:6. Second, God existed before there was a universe and will exist after the universe perishes in Hebrews chapter 1, verse 10 through 12. Third, God is the main character in the Bible. He is the subject of the first verb in the Bible. In fact, he is the subject of more verbs than any other character and performs a wider variety of activities than any other being in the Bible. Fourth, as creator, God has done what no human could ever do. In its active form, the Hebrew verb bara means to create, never has a human subject. Thus, bara signifies a work that is uniquely God's. Fifth, God is mysterious. Though this particular Hebrew word for God is plural, the verb form of which God is the subject is singular. This is perhaps a subtle allusion to God's Trinitarian nature. He is 3 divine persons and 1 divine essence. Sixth, God is the creator of heaven and earth. He does not just modify pre-existing matter, but calls matter into being out of nothing in Psalms 33:6. Seventh, God is not dependent on the universe, but the universe is totally dependent on God in Hebrews chapter 1, verse 3. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. Verse 2. In an effort to explain the origins of evil or find biblical evidence for an old earth, some Bible scholars have suggested that the verb was should be translated as became. They believe a time gap, possibly a vast one, exists between the first 2 verses of the Bible. This allows interpreters to suggest that the early earth was without form and void because Satan's rebellion marked God's good creation. However, the construction of this sentence in the original Hebrew favors the traditional translation was rather than became. The sense of verse 2 is that God created the earth without form and void as unfinished and unfilled state. The deep, a single word in Hebrew, suggests original state of creation that was shapeless as liquid water. The Hebrew verb translated move, translated fluttereth in Deuteronomy 32:11, suggests that the Spirit of God was watching over his creation just as a bird watches over its young. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. Verse 4. Another basic truth of the Bible is that God saw. This means he is fully aware of his creation. The term good, used here for the first of 7 times in this chapter to evaluate God's creative work, can be used to express both high quality and moral excellence. The physical universe is a good place because God made it. God found satisfaction in his labor. This is the first instance where God divided the twin realm of light and darkness, day and night. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. Verse 5. In ancient Israel, the act of naming an object, place, or person indicated that you held control over it. When God named the light and the darkness, he asserted his lordship and control over all of time. In ancient Israelite, a modern Jewish tradition, evening is the transition point from one day to the next. Scholars differ over the meaning of day in the phrases one day, the second day, etc. Some argue for 24-hour periods, but other options are possible, especially since 1, there was at first no sun by which to distinguish 24-hour periods. 2, day means the period of daylight in chapter 1, verse 5a, And 3, day refers to the whole creation period in chapter 2, verse 4. Consequently, some scholars understand the days of creation as extended periods of uncertain length or as a rhetorical device by which the account of creation is structured. And God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so." Verse 7. God's second act of separation was to divide atmospheric water from terrestrial water. Thus he began the process of giving form to the material world. The clause, "it was so," found 6 times in this chapter, emphasizes God's absolute power over creation. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. Verse 8. Heaven can refer to the earth's atmospheric envelope, outer space in verse 15, or the spiritual realm where God lives in Psalms 11, verse 4. God said, "Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. Verse 9. God's third and final act of separation created oceans and continents. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas. And God saw that it was good. Verse 10. In his third and final act of naming, God demonstrated his authority over all the earth and the seas. And God said, "Let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth." And it was so. And the earth brought forth grass and herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after his kind. And God saw that it was good, and the evening and the morning were the third day. Verse 11 through 13. In preparation for the introduction of animal and human life, God provided an abundant supply of food. The consistent biblical teaching is that, like Begets, like Luke chapter 6, verse 44, establishes that principle for plant life, while 5 of the 6 days contain at least one act of creation evaluated as good, only the 3rd and 6th day have his statement more than once. And God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. Let them be for the lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth." And it was so. And God made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. And God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good, and the evening and the morning were the 4th day. Verse 14 through 15. The events of day 4 complement those of day 1, filling the day and night with finished forms of light. The various lights or light-giving objects were worshipped as gods in the cultures that surrounded ancient Israel. In Genesis, however, the sun, moon, and stars are portrayed as servants of God that would fulfill 3 roles, separating the newly created realms of day and night, marking seasons so that those who worship the Creator could keep their festivals in each of the seasons and provide light upon the earth. And God said, "Let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that has life, and fowl that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven." Verse 20. The 5th day's events complement those of day 2, filling the newly formed heavenly domains above and the watery regions below. And God created great whales and every living creature that moveth, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good. Verse 21. The reuse of the verb created, bara, in Hebrew, emphasizes God's authority over the large sea creatures. And God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let fowl multiply in the earth." And the evening and the morning were the 5th day. Verse 22 through 23. The first of 3 blessings God pronounced in the creation narrative occurred when God blessed the water animals and birds. And God said, "Let the earth bring forth the living creature after his kind, cattle and creeping thing, and beast of the earth after his kind." And it was so. And God made the beast of the earth after his kind, and cattle after their kind, and everything that creepeth upon the earth after his kind. And God saw that it was good. Verse 24 through 25. The term living creature is the same as in translated living soul. The 6th day is for creating land creatures, including people. The 3 groups of animals are domesticated livestock, crawlers, and wild animals. And God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. Verse 26. God use of plural nouns, us, our, and our, to refer to himself as raised many questions. At least 5 different suggestions have been put forward to explain them. They may be references to 1, the Trinity, 2, God and his angels, 3, God and creation, 4, God's majesty and expressed by a literary device known as the plural of majesty, or 5, a polytheistic view of God. Since the Bible teaches elsewhere that there is only one God in Deuteronomy 6, verse 4, the 5th option is not tenable. The 2 Hebrew words translated as image and likeness are often understood as having the same meaning, but some interpreters suggest the image refers to the ability to reason, with likeness referring to the spiritual dimension. What exactly is the image of God? Since the Bible teaches that God is a spirit in John 4, verse 24, many commentators believe it refers to the non-material aspect of a person, our moral sensibilities, intellectual abilities, will, and emotions. Based on God's commands in Genesis 1, verse 28, others have suggested that it consists of the role humans are to play on Earth, their rulership over the planet and its resources, and secondarily, the physical, mental, and spiritual abilities that enable them to fulfill that role. So God created man in his own image, and in the image of God created he him. Male and female, he created them. Verse 27. The creation of humanity is the crowning event of chapter 1, as shown by the fact that created is repeated 3 times. The verb created, bara in Hebrew, is the same one used in verse 1, referring to a kind of creative activity that only God can do. The term man in Hebrew, Adam, is used elsewhere in the Hebrew Bible to refer to humanity in general, not just males. All people, both male and female, are created in the image of God. It should not be concluded that God is both male and female. And God blessed them, and God said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. Verse 28. In this, the longest of the 5 blessings found in the account of creation, God gave humanity 5 different commands. Implicit in the first 3 commands is God's blessing on the institutions of marriage and the family. The final 2 commands, to subdue the earth and have dominion over the animal kingdom, express God's blessing on the use of the planet's renewable and non-renewable natural resources. And God said, Behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in which is the fruit of the tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat, and to every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the air, and to everything that creepeth upon the earth, wherein there is life. I have given every green herb for meat, and it was so. Verse 29 through 30. The repeated use of the Hebrew word kol, or all, every, in verse 29 through 30 shows that the point is to emphasize God's abundant and generous provision for all his creatures, rather than to specify what they were or were not supposed to eat. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And the evening and the morning were the 6th day. Verse 31. This is the 7th, final, and most elaborate use of the word good in the account of the 7 days of creation, in that it adds very to good. In this chapter, we have 3 essential Christian truths, and the first being the creation out of nothing. The Bible teaches that God created the universe, everything both visible and invisible, out of nothing, sometimes expressed in the Latin phrase creation ex nihilo. This means that before God created anything, nothing else existed except God himself. God alone is eternal. Every created thing has a beginning. Therefore, the eternal God rules over all of his creation, and he alone is worthy of worship. Denial of this doctrine has implications for God's sovereignty over and providence in creation. Because God created out of nothing, creation has meaning and purpose and points us to the Creator. The second essential Christian truth is on the image of God in humanity. The image of God in humanity is understood as mirroring God's attributes in our nature, actions, and relational capacities. In Jesus, we see the true image of God. He perfectly mirrors God's attributes, fulfills God's will, and enjoys a perfect relationship with the Father. The Bible continues to speak of the image of God in humanity even after our fall into sin. even though our ability to rightly reflect God has been marred. And the third essential Christian truth on the goodness of creation. In Genesis 1, God repeatedly affirmed that all of his creation was good, even very good. It is good in God's judgment because he created it for a purpose that it fulfilled, to reflect and display the good character of the Creator. Therefore, sin and evil should not be seen as foundational part of the creation, but rather as corruption of it. While the creation has been marred and distorted as a result of sin, it is still good in the hands of God and serves his purpose of proclaiming his glory in the world. God's people should affirm and seek to preserve the goodness of God's creation.